Peter.
Down 1.7% here, a loss of 37 points or so. Apple shares are just getting hammered this morning.
We're down by between 3 and 4.5% generally across these markets. Let's talk about the speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate. We're red everywhere, essentially. Down by.
That's reaction from the 2008 stock market crash when we were just in 7th and 8th grade. And it looks and sounds eerily similar to some teams reacting to their team performances this past week. Welcome again to the ShadowCast. This is episode 3 of the season, and we now have the OG3 back at it. Car issues are gone. You can't have car issues when you don't have one. House of Pancakes, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. Great to be here. Apologize for my absence. Had a loss in the family. As you all know, Mustang no longer with me. So rest in peace. Had to be done. Glad to be back. Missed you, boys.
Miss you too, man. It's always a hard pill to swallow when a car like that goes away. I had that happen with my dad's Toyota 4Runner. Shortly after, a girl in our grade puked in it and didn't clean it up. That was down on the Cape, and it was a lot of fun. But anyway, let's get back to it. Our trusty commissioners here as well, Mr. Green Eggs and Hamos. Hamos, welcome back to the show. 1 week absence, but we're happy to have you back. And I'll tell you, it was good having PMJ here, but it's great to see you guys again.
Yeah, good to be back. Try to liven things up a little bit, especially with the news we have today. Special TradaPALOOOOOZA 2022 episode of the ShadowCast. So got a lot of good stuff to get into and share in addition to just sort of the weekly recap.
Yeah, what a show we have. I think I buried the lead with that one. Thanks for helping me out. This is the best podcast you'll listen to the rest of the season. Keep listening, but this is going to take the cake. We have special guests. We have in-episode trades happening for you. Be ready for anything. It's about to get very real. Let's get into the matchups, but I wanted to talk about real quick a Mad Money minute, a millisecond here for myself. The TE Gates within the Simba Corporation. Logan Thomas is no longer with the team. He was cut midday Sunday after being putrid. It was about 11:30, 11:45. We got new analytics detailing how good he's been in categories that don't really translate to performance on the field. We went with our statisticians on that one, our analytics department. A lot of them are no longer with us. We're going more with the gut these days. That's what got us to certain places before, and we hope to have that again. So I wanted to address that because I know Patman Jones came out of his cellar to make a tweet about it. And you know it's important when Patman Jones comes out and starts tweeting at you, even though he didn't actually at me. So just wanted to address that for him on the West Coast. He's getting those chill vibes out there. I'm sure he's dealing with some kind buds and enjoying himself to the nth degree. I'm happy for him, but just know that has been addressed and it will no longer be talked about. Let's go on and just hit these recaps real quick. Let's start with the 1v2. This is the week 4 1v2. Kansas City Queefs versus Green Eggs and Hamos. This was a great matchup across the board for most of the day, really highlighted by Jalen Hurts and his dominant performance, his budding MVP campaign, as well as Cordarrelle Patterson coming back from I think a 4-point performance last week, Hamos, and really picking up the slack where DeAndre Swift's shoulder couldn't. Just if you can, Hamos, talk about this win. It's a bit of a Pyrrhic victory. You had a big guy go down, but the win is a win is a win.
Yeah, I think I felt pretty fortunate to get this one. The reason being, yeah, Hurts had an awesome game, but Devonta Smith completely canceled him out. So like I'm watching Hurts highlights and all his passes are going to Smith, touchdowns are going to Smith. So, Smith outscores Hurts at the end of the day. That basically wipes his game out. And then you mentioned Swift being not involved and hurt. I thought I was in, real trouble going into the 4:00 games. Luckily, we were bailed out by Patterson and Christian Kirk. Really swung things for me there to the point where I pretty much had it locked up by Sunday night, which was a relief. But I think John's team is really good. He made an intelligent move to bench Herbert instead of throwing him in there while he was banged up, and that would have made it a lot less competitive. But it's a good looking team that he's got there. I think I was fortunate to walk away with the win. The other big piece I forgot to mention, the Philly defense with 18.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen every week. So I had some luck on my side, but happy to get the win.
Yeah, David, I look at this win and it's so funny you mention it because I was trying to figure out where the advantage was for Hamos. And then I see the Philly defense, and that matters big time. It also matters with the kicker as well, getting 8 points. Kicker still matters to some franchises that think it doesn't. But this also, for the Queefs team that started out 2-0, Dave, this is a blip on the radar, but it looks like they're still in very strong position. They have a very solid starting lineup.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, I think this matchup might be the top two teams with the top wide receiving core going at each other. It's interesting that if you look down the scoreboard, it's pretty symmetrical in terms of where the points are. And obviously you see there Waller, Carter, Joseph is a kicker. And then the stark difference really is the Rams versus Philly defenses, which, as Alex said, you can't bank on that happening, but you'll take it when it happens. They're the close teams. I wouldn't be surprised to see them later on down the line, and then again in the playoffs. But huge win for Hamos, and you're going to take that every week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Nick Chubb, Michael Pittman comes back from that quad scare. He shows up and he's just a dynamite wide receiver too. Cooper Kupp had an off week. And Alex, as you know all too well, this being an off week ain't that bad. 16 points for Cooper Kupp, even had a rushing touchdown in the mix. Devonta Smith emerging as a wide receiver 3 for the KCQs is a big deal. Looks like flex might be a little bit of a concern going into week 4, but I know the Qs will figure it out, and they got a good team, and I couldn't agree with you more, David. I think we'll be seeing a lot more of these two teams later on this fall and into the winter. Moving on, we have Here Comes Treble versus Patman Jones. Patman Jones coming in at 2-0. I spoke with him last week on the show and said, wouldn't it be amazing if you were the first undefeated team in League of Shadows history? He immediately hated me for making that comment because he knew it would be jinxed. I did the same thing in fantasy baseball when he was the first overall seed and he lost in the semifinals. So I can understand why he has fled to Seattle at this point. But the story of the game, really, it was a low-scoring affair, all things considered. The story of the game was on Thursday night. Amari Cooper comes out and really starts showing off what he used to do on a game-to-game basis for both the Raiders and the Cowboys. And Alex, you've had experience with Amari Cooper. This is the classic Amari boom week that gets you the win as a wide receiver too.
Yeah, I think Amari's just a good wide receiver, right? Jack got a value on him because of the quarterback situation in Cleveland, but he's getting targeted like crazy, and as long as you're getting targets, you're gonna put up points more often than not. So that's like an example of a guy where you look back on him, go back to the draft, and it's like, why wouldn't I have picked him in like the 3rd round or the 4th round? That's kind of how I feel about him right now. 21 targets in the past 2 weeks, 100 yards in each game, and a touchdown in each game. That's pretty solid. Concern for Mr. Treble going forward is obviously going to be the Dalvin injury. I think it's a shoulder, right? And he's like had shoulder injuries before. Maybe he'll
popping out.
play through it, but Yeah, even so, any given play, he could get knocked out of the game. So you'd almost rather him just be out and you can plan for something else other than throw him in there and risk him getting KO'd of the game at any minute. So that'll be a challenge for him going forward. I mean, I think he at least has Singletary on the bench, decent option. The stat line this week was a little bit inflated because I don't think he's going to catch 9 balls all that often. But at least a guy can plug in from his bench because there's really no other options on the wire.
Yeah, what a wacky game that was down in South Beach, down in Miami, as they are about to get hit by a pretty rough hurricane. The hurricane came for Patman Jones this week in the form of Here Comes Treble. Dave, if anything can be taken away from this, it's a tough loss for Patman Jones. All losses are tough, but the emergence of Chris Olave as a real wide receiver target for the Patman Joneses has got to be very, very make them very happy in Patman Jones HQ.
Absolutely. I remember seeing the Olave stat line go across the bottom on red zone on Sunday. I had to do a double take. I kind of was hitting myself because I'm partial to the rookie wide receivers myself, and I didn't take one this year. And Olave was definitely on that list. But I think for Patman, if you look across the entire board, I mean, it could have been even more of a blowout if Jack started a few guys that are on his bench.
Yeah.
So you take away Amon-Ra St. Brown, Olave performing up to snuff, and you move on to next week, and hope that your running backs kind of come up to level and perform like they can perform.
Yeah, Javonte and Austin, I think concern level crawling from yellow to orange with those two backs for Patman Jones, but they have plenty to offer here, and the bench looks decently deep. So I think there's still some good things to come out of this. And hey, they're still in 4th place. They're 2-1 on the season. There's plenty to still be happy about over there. I'm sure he's overjoyed as usual. Moving on, the House of Pancakes, Dave, versus the Dark Knights. Starting out 0-1, I want to get your thought on how you thought the year was going to go when you had that first week meltdown, especially with that Chris Godwin injury on Sunday Night Football, and to see you rip off these 2 wins in a row, this one in a dominant fashion. You got to be feeling good. And listen, this is Joe Burrow at his best, performing like a QB1, like you kept him to be. And there's plenty of ammunition left in the chamber for some of these wide receivers and running backs.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. House of Pancakes HQ is pretty dark after week 1. Had some doom and gloom going about the prospects for the season. Seeing the teams perform, like this, everything kind of clicked with the wide receivers and running backs, which you can't bank on happening every week. But I think really the piece of my team that I'm going to be looking to and hopefully adding to is the wide receivers. I thankfully have a pretty deep RB2 roster right now, which I don't think I've ever done before in this league. So it's really dependent on whether my wide receivers perform. And, I don't think Russell Gage is going to get more points than Stephon Diggs too many weeks. So
yeah,
I'll take the W and say thank you very much to the Dark Knights.
Yeah, and Stephon Diggs was dealing with some tough heat conditions down in Miami, and I think that contributed to his lack of performance, but that's just bound to happen. Those are the elements. The elements were not too kind, Alex, to the Dark Knights this week. Early in the first quarter, David Montgomery goes down with an ankle knee injury. This looked just like a lost week from that. But if you look, the kicker position was filled. The 9 points, as you mentioned on Twitter, 9 points isn't nothing when this 6th place looks like it's going to be one of the most heated playoff races in a long time.
Yeah, it's true. I agree. And it's funny, like looking at the standings right now and you see Nico in 6th place, but like he wouldn't make the playoffs right now. Chase
Right.
Gentleman would be in. So that's going to take some getting used to. And I think it, makes every point you can get critical throughout the year. But I think, like you said, for the Dark Knights this week, the Montgomery injury. That's just really unfortunate, and it stings even more when Khalil Herbert comes in and gets like 100, however many yards he had, and multiple touchdowns. Because theoretically that could have been Montgomery, and then maybe we're talking about a closer matchup here. I think that coupled with Tyreek coming back down to earth a little bit is really what did the dark nights in this one.
Brady,
but overall, just kind of a week you throw out, right? If you're Nico, you got the injury and you've got a couple weak performances. It's going to happen sometimes, so I wouldn't be too worried if I was him.
Yeah, George Kittle still getting in the swing of things. As you mentioned, Dave, Tom Brady still not performing up to a QB1 caliber as of yet. That's got to concern the Knights. And I think, as you mentioned with Tyreek coming down to earth, these are the waves you got to ride with Tyreek if you're the Tyreek owner. It's going to come, as you well know, in a big, 40-point performance, and then there's going to be a 5-point performance right after it. That's just how it goes. He's a weak winner, but sometimes he won't always be there to help you. He's like Spider-Man in that way, or any superhero really, besides the Avengers, who always seem to come in clutch and always win against the bad guys. Overall, I think TDK looks still pretty solid. What they lost in Montgomery with Herbert, they gained, unfortunately for you, Alex, with Swift and Jamal Williams. So they look still primed to be a contender this year. This is one of the deeper rosters we've seen, and I think they faced off, David, this week against one of the deeper rosters in the House of Pancakes. So that was a great matchup that just fell a little short of expectation, I think, as you mentioned, and due in large part to that Montgomery injury. Moving on, we have the 7th-seeded Chafe Gentlemen, the resurgent Chafe Gentlemen against the Floppy Knockers. The Knockers last week got absolutely destroyed by injuries, and I was the recipient, the fateful recipient of those injuries, leading to my first win of the season. Not as many injuries on the board here, just lack of performance. But at the same time, Alex, when you look at the Chafe Gentlemen and how they performed this week, no one else could have beaten them. They looked very good, and they look kind of primed. As you said, they're a playoff team right now. They look primed to enter this race after starting off 0-2.
Yeah, and I think it was the Derrick Henry kind of correction there. Seeing him involved in the passing game too was interesting. 25 points from him. He gets a rushing touchdown. And then what can you say about Lamar? I mean, he looks like MVP, what was that, 2018, 2019? I can't remember, but whenever he was just dominant, 4 passing touchdowns, 100 rushing yards, and 200 plus passing yards too. So you're getting, essentially QB1 production there, and then running back 1 production in addition to Derrick Henry. It's just kind of like a cheat code in fantasy. The only concern I would have with him is Kamara has been iffy to this point, which is, will he come around or not? I'm not so sure, but I don't see another decent running back. Well, Breece Hall, I suppose, could develop into something.
Yeah.
But Kamara, that early round investment not panning out is really the only concern I see for him with, London coming along and McLaurin putting up a good week too. So nice week for Chafe, and, good for him to be in the 6th position right now.
Yeah, we've seen this with our prior ownership of Lamar Jackson. Alex, these are the weeks you just love having him on your squad. It was brutal to see. It was against the Patriots, but 39.4 points, that'll do it. I'd also point out, I think, lost in a great week is also decent production from the wide receiver position, but still no true wide receiver 1. I think the Chafe's hope is that Breece Hall turns in that RB2 and they're able to kind of package assets to get that wide receiver 1. Because I don't know if we've seen a team win the whole thing without a bona fide wide receiver 1 in a very long time. So that's something to keep an eye out for the Floppy Knockers. Dave, just another tough luck week, one to throw into the trash. I see good performances from streamers like Tyler Conklin, but injuries hitting them once again with Michael Thomas. Tua looked banged up from a back injury, and just a few other issues for the Knockers. But there's still hope. This team has championship pedigree written all over it. McCaffrey, though, do you see this as his new kind of floor, or do you think he's got another gear to kick into?
Yeah, I wouldn't be waving the panic flag yet if I was Tom. He has the pieces. I think this is the worst you'll see McCaffrey this year. That whole offense still seems to be looking to get in on the same page into rhythm with the new quarterback. I think getting Mike Evans back next week obviously will be big for him at the wide receiver spot. And I mean, as you said, Miami was just a death pit of hell with the weather and what it was doing to the players there. So I mean, are you going to bank on Tua as your QB1 to get 39 points every week? No, but I think it's pretty safe to say that he's going to give you more than 11 points every week.
Yeah.
So I agree. If Tom can keep his good luck with the streamers going and get a few guys healthy and see CMC return to form, then that's all it takes to get in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I think, we see this week, Gallup still not back. He's going to be an impact player for the Knockers. Same with Dalton Schultz and Mike Evans coming back from suspension, helping out Tom Brady down in Tampa. This team's going to be okay. You just got to wonder with these low point totals, again, how that affects that sixth place spot if the Knockers fall into that kind of category. That's where wins are still extremely important in the League of Shadows. Moving on to my matchup, Simbacorp versus Moist Towelette. The Towleys get their first win of the season, and what a win it was. Well, not really. This was just a mess all over across the board. Mark Andrews is the highlight in this matchup. Damian Pierce and Melvin Gordon also getting touchdowns. Somehow, Justin Jefferson getting 4 points. If you told me that was going to happen pre-week, I would say I was running away, but issues are still persistent at the Corp. Moist gets off the schneid, gets their first win of the season. Alex, what do you see from Moist perspective, and what are some positives to take away from this big first win of 2022?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that his running back room is trending in the right direction. Damian Pierce looks like the guy in Houston now, Burkhead being phased out, and Melvin Gordon being involved at the goal line. In addition to that, you had Edmonds on the bench who had 2 rushing touchdowns, which is kind of a fluky good week. I don't think he had much yardage wise, and then you've got the Madison upside with Dalvin banged up. So I think we're seeing that 0 RB strategy come to fruition a little bit. The problem is that I'm still concerned with the receivers, and mainly Justin Jefferson, because he was being drafted as this year's Cooper Kupp. Essentially, everybody thought he would fit into that role in O'Connell's offense, have crazy numbers. I don't think Cooper Kupp has ever had 4.4 points in a week going back to last season, probably way in the past. But if that's possible for Justin Jefferson, then he was probably overdrafted where he was. So I think he's still a great wide receiver, obviously, but if he's capable of such a week, then he's not the elite of the elite that we thought he might be. And then we talked about the Panthers issues a little bit. I think that whole offense is just sluggish, so he's been a big disappointment as well. But if Jefferson can come back around, he gets those running backs continuing to trend in the right direction, then like anyone else in the league right now, Moy still have a shot at the playoffs. So good to see that production for him this week.
Yeah, there's always a shot these days, which is great to see. David, I want to put this in your hands so I'm not as subjective as I think I might be. But let me just say, my team kind of goes as Mike Williams goes right now, and I don't know if I love that. What do you think?
Yeah, it's funny, Warren, and I appreciate that. Just looking at the scoreboard, if I didn't look at the totals, I would have thought that you had crushed Moist this week. Just so much more even across the board in terms of point distribution. Obviously, he has the big week from Andrews, which killed both your team and the Patriots. But in general, I don't think you'll have many weeks where your top 3 receivers combine for about 10 points and you get a W. So looking at your team, I agree with you in terms of going, with or without Mike Williams. I think Stafford is maybe more of your pivot point. But I have to give you credit because I think Barkley was probably the steal of the draft at the end there. I was pretty pissed when you took him on the turn. I was really hoping to get him in the second round, but he looks like he's back to form. And in general, I think, we said this basically about every team, but your team especially looks very well positioned to, put together a run here and not only make the playoffs, but be a high seed.
Yeah, we'll see. I think at this point, getting to week 7 at 500 is our internal goal. Obviously, we want to win every game, but getting DeAndre Hopkins back after suspension, unless he gets suspended again, of course, that will be key to help buoy this franchise at the moment. So a good win by Moist, 125-113. Well done, my friend. Salute to you on getting the big win. I want to bring in a special guest for this next game because it was game of the week. And I also think he's going to be very important for us as we start talking about the TradaPALOOOOOZA that happened in the league, especially today, or what's about to happen. We welcome Raz Al Ghul, Bobby Hunter, and LOS Woj. Raz, welcome to the show, and we're going to start off with a breakdown of your matchup against Paul At Your Boy. I want to take it from your perspective first and foremost, because you were a Monday night nightmare away from 0-3. You pull it out. CeeDee Lamb gets it done for you. What were the emotions during the Monday Night Football matchup?
Yeah, thanks for having me, gentlemen. Always a pleasure. I was sweating big time during that matchup, to be honest. I had just gotten back from London with my girlfriend yesterday, and we were super tired, and like chime change, all that stuff was all messed up. And she was going to bed. She's like, "Are you staying up for this game?" And I was like, "Oh, absolutely, I have to." I got CeeDee Lamb. She's going through the whole details. So I was super tired, but I stayed up for it. And I was already making the meme with Roz's season slipping through CD's hands. Like I was like already mentally preparing for that after he dropped that deep pass. But then he ended up beasting in the fourth quarter with that one-handed touchdown and basically saved my season. That's the way I see it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a season saved. Leaving the 4:00 games, you had the Chargers defense against Jacksonville go for -4. And then going into Sunday night, dealing with Russell Wilson, underwhelming again, giving you that little bit of hope for Monday night. It became a Richie James versus CeeDee Lamb matchup with Richie James getting an extra few points on the board. Alex and Dave, you watched that game. When you saw that CeeDee Lamb drop, did you think it was all done? Was that going to be indicative of the Raz reemergence?
I'll be honest, I missed the drop live, but that's just the type of thing that when you've got CeeDee Lamb going against Richie James and you're like, I might lose this now, that's tough to watch. So I thought that the way that CeeDee rebounded from that, Bob, must have been just like awesomely satisfying to win it, clinch it on a one-handed touchdown catch, and then boom, you're done. So that was exciting to watch as a fan of competition and a fan of the League of Shadows. So great game of the week matchup. Glad it paid off, and congratulations to Raz.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's an app out there where you can delete previous texts, but I was saying some not so nice things about CD.
Well, he was smiling after that drop. He was acting like he just caught the game-winning touchdown right there. So I don't blame you unless you blame yourself for the things that you said. But what a matchup it was. And I hold on, sorry.
I gotta ask Warren. Let me interject here.
Yes,
Bobby, how are you feeling about your trade with Paul after this matchup?
Yes, great point. So just the details of the trade. It was Travis Kelce and Darnell Mooney leaving Raz Al Ghul for Gabe Davis, J.K. Dobbins, and Kyle Pitts heading into the Raz headquarters.
Yeah, so I actually feel really good about it. Seeing Mooney just put up another, shitty game in that run first offense really solidified. Because I was kind of predicting. When I was talking to Paul, I was like, I think Mooney will have better weeks, but right now that offense is just really run heavy. So I'm fine with parting ways with him, even though he was my keeper. Kelsey's obviously going to beast all year. I know that. But I think the value I got back with the stack with Gabe Davis, I think he's going to have some big weeks. Kyle Pitts finally showed up, and he didn't even really show up. So I think there's another level that he can take his game to. And then J.K. Dobbins, I think that offense is going to be booming all year. And I think he's hopefully going to get back to his old ways. So I actually really like that trade for myself, because I really needed depth at wide receiver and running back. My team had a lot of holes in it.
Well, I just wanted to thank you for that, Ruz. I just ignored a call, so I have to make a call back. 1 second. Yeah, put him on. Hey, Leonard. Yeah, I appreciate it. Best of luck. Talk to you soon. Woj, I think you have a few bits and pieces of information, just a few morsels for us plebes at the podcast. You have the inside intel. You might have just heard what just came across that call there, but maybe not. If you didn't, let us know. You have plenty of trades, plenty of TradaPALOOOOOZAs to give us.
Yeah, so I heard some murmurs earlier today, and as I was sitting here eating my Chick-fil-A, some things came across my desk. Rapidly deals were getting done. So first and foremost, we have the Simba Corp trading Lenny Fournette, which you may have just heard on that phone call, the parting ways, by a respectful partnership, but it looks like he is parting ways with Leonard Fournette, sending him to Green Eggs and Hamos for Cortland Sutton. Solo for solo, one-on-one trade.
Straight up.
Shall we go into details there? You want to hear what else I have?
Holy shit.
Drop all the bombs.
Secondly, we have Brandon Ayuk, also from the Simba Corp, going to the House of Pancakes for Zeke Elliott. Another,
Wow.
So a running back out and then a running back in for Simba, which is interesting. Thirdly, we have Ra's al Ghul sending Elijah Moore, Brian Robinson Jr., and Ramondre Stevenson for DJ Moore and Chase Edmonds.
Wow.
Another big trade.
Now I brought in the only third-party observer possible and available, the one, the only, yet two-time, just like Ra's al Ghul, champion of the LOS, the Dark Knights. Sir, welcome to the podcast.
Good evening, gentlemen. Happy to be here and happy to be joining at some very exciting news there, huh?
Yeah, you heard it here first, and you got some of those live and without any knowledge prior of what had just transpired. Knock down the list for us, TDK. Start off where you want to start off, but there's plenty of meat on that bone to knock off.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot to process there. Did get a leak earlier in the day from the Moist franchise, so I was aware of the Elijah Moore trade.
Iraqi Navy over there.
I will say initial thoughts there. Definitely really liking what Simba did, trading one running back out and bringing another one in. Really like that trade for him, and also trade for Alex really looks good. Gets that running back he needs. So seems like all the teams involved there are shoring up what they need on their rosters.
Yeah, and you missed it earlier, but the House of Pancakes were talking about their need for wide receivers. They get it in Brandon Ayuk, a guy that you are very familiar with from last season. You saw him at his lowest of lows and then the highest of highs towards the end of the year. He is someone that the Knights have coveted for a long time, and clearly you know best what Ayuk is going to do, and what do you think he can do for the House of Pancakes?
Brandon and the Knights it wasn't really a fit there, so we mutually parted ways at the end of the season. But he's flashed last game with Jimmy G, so hopefully, for David, he'll continue to produce.
Yeah, and I just want to get kind of thought process, starting off with you, Alex, thought process going into today. We mentioned earlier, I think off the air, about the dearth of options in the waiver wire. Did you take a look at that and know immediately that your savior, your what running back savior was going to come from the trade market?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I think like you get a guy go down with an injury, first thing you do is check out the waiver wire, and when your options are like Tyler Algier and I don't even know who else, you just say forget it. So I was in the market pretty much immediately, actually going back to last week, recognizing that I just had Swift and Patterson really that were viable, and if one of those guys goes down, I'm in trouble. So House of Pancakes and I actually had some pretty significant negotiations over the past 4 or 5 days. Funny enough, at one point we had a Allen Robinson for James Robinson deal on the table, which I turned down. Regret that one big time. And then it got to the point where yesterday we had a deal on the table for Sutton for Clyde and Zeke, so a 2-for-1 deal. And I went to bed last night fully thinking I would make that trade with David today. But then I just kind of thought, I don't really trust either one of those guys. I want a better option. And funny enough, just as I was getting a text together to Warren asking about Fournette, he messaged me, essentially proposing Sutton for Fournette straight up. So thought that was a sign. Think it helps us both out. Lenny's got tremendous volume and, reliable guy and offense that will get better. So exactly what I need. And, it's tough to part with Cortland. He's a guy that we really liked going into the season. Had him, locked into our 3rd draft slot for, probably a month before the draft. But I just couldn't look my team in the eyes and tell them we're competing for a championship with, Jerick McKinnon as my running back too. So something had to be done, and, happy to make the deal with Simba.
Yeah, thank you. And it's always a pleasure doing business. We've had a few interactions. I know you went way back in the database today going through trades. You had that one situation where you traded with the House of Pancakes 3 times in 1 year. And we were joking how that is even possible. Roz, you're the wheeler and dealer. You got the first trade done of the season. What did you think about the 2 trades that you just announced, and what do you see for both the Pancakes getting Ayuk and shoring up their wide receivers, and also the potential emergence of Lenny as the guy at Green Eggs and Hamos?
Yeah, so I guess we'll start with Ayuk. I've had him in the past. I think he is a very talented player. It's just like, you never really know what's going to happen in the 49ers offense, but the one thing you do know is they're well coached and they do score points. Like, I think, Jimmy was probably just getting used to the offense this week. He was out, he missed a lot of camp. So I think Ayuk's actually going to have a big year. So I think that was a smart move on Landy's part. He sent Zeke, right? I'm getting all these trades mixed up.
Yeah.
Okay. Zeke's interesting because Pollard has been looking, by the eye test, looks like he's been the more explosive player, but that offense should continue to get better. Cooper Rush has actually been solid, and Dak looks like he's going to be back within the next few weeks here. So I still believe in the Cowboys. They had the most touchdowns last year in the entire NFL. So I think Zeke's going to get a lot of goal line work. I think both backs are actually going to be usable throughout fantasy, kind of like AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones. So I like this. I like the trade for both sides.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And Dave, I want to get your thoughts, kind of right back at you type vibe. Your thoughts on the Roz and Moist deal. One that, if I understand it correctly, Bob, and feel free to give us the brief oral history if you have a chance, but one that kind of came together over the course of this afternoon with not much expectation at first.
Yeah, so we actually, I was just looking at my bye weeks. I was seeing Ramondre had the same one as Dobbins. and I was just kind of looking ahead. So I was initially just looking at Chase Edmonds, and then we were trying to figure out different bench things. He didn't really love Duvernay. I was trying to get like Renfro, possibly Romeo Dobbs. I don't know how to say his name, but he's pretty good. Diana knows he's good. And then eventually I just kind of gauged his temperature on DJ. I was like, are you looking to part ways? What if I throw in Elijah? Because I believe in DJ. I think Carolina started slow, but Baker should get going a little bit. I actually think he's getting a lot of shit right now, and he's a decent quarterback. So it ended up DJ started to get talked about, and then he was on the fence about Elijah and Ramondre straight up. So I just said, all right, what if I throw Brian Robinson in as well? Who I did shop out to the Queefs for their handcuff, and he denied it. So there was a lot of talks going on today, but ultimately able to get this done with Diana, and hopefully don't end up in LOS court again.
Yeah, well, Dave, Brian Robinson, the little cherry on top, it sounds pretty sweet for Raz Al Ghul.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all falls on Moore, right? Like if he plays up to his talent, he's a very talented receiver. Then I think it's a clear win for Raz. But there's no guarantees there, right? I mean, I do like that he's gotten, I think, 6 targets every week so far. So he's getting looks. I think we've touched on it a few times. Like that offense is just pretty sluggish right now. I don't know if I would have had the cherries to send Stevenson away. I like him, especially with the absence of White for the Pats. Who knows now with Mac Jones injury? Like it could go either way, right? They might run it more now that Mac's out, but overall, I think it's a pretty even trade. I'm not sure. I guess I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall of that conversation with Moist. As we all know, his trade talks are
Would love to be
adventurous.
the fly on the wall for every conversation with Moist.
But honestly, I'm having a hard time keeping track of everyone going back and forth in all these trades. So
yeah, that's all right. I mean, we understand that. And at TDK, no one knows the inner workings of the Moist franchise, I think, better than you. You've had situations where you've lost to them early in the season, not this year, but early in the season, and then just seem to be the papa when it comes to the playoff time. What do you think of the deal from Moist's side? Do they have anything to hang their hat on with this Ramondre and Elijah move?
Yeah, I mean, initial reaction is definitely would like to have been on the Raw side of the deal. That being said, I think Moist did buy low on Elijah. I think that there's a lot of underlying metrics out there that he's definitely due to regress to the mean, back up, or not regress, but move back up to the mean of what he did last year. He's leading. I know he's pretty high up in air yards and other stats that I've seen. So it's really going to come down to that for him. I think that Ramondre is a slight upgrade probably to Edmonds, but yeah, I mean, and Robinson's a nice sweetener too, but giving away a guy like DJ, I mean, he invested what 3rd or 4th round draft capital in him. I mean, I feel like he sold a little low, but time will tell.
And it was a guy that you had your eyes on pre-draft, and it was
I was going to take him, and I didn't want AJ Brown, so sometimes it works that way.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Not a bad fallback option for TDK there. So now that I have you, TDK, you've been relatively quiet on the trade front. I know you've been approached by many organizations. What is the vibe in the clubhouse coming off your first loss of the season? Tough loss of David Montgomery, but still plenty signs of life for the TDK franchise.
Yeah, for sure. Week 3 was one to forget. David gave it to the Knights last week, so we're trying to come out. We got a big first matchup, Thursday Night Football with Tyreek. So we're hoping he can rebound. Yeah, I mean, losing Montgomery's tough, but we'll see. Signing Curtis Samuel was big for us. Shore up the wide receiver 3 slot.
Shout out Curtis.
Yeah. So got a few open bench spots here, take some flyers. Everyone else on the roster is pretty strong. So we'll see what happens overnight.
And once you lose a Montgomery, you gain in a Williams.
That as well. Jamal.
It's a give and take.
Nice add. Nice
Exactly
add to
right.
the rotation there.
Yeah,
So-
well, it's always good to have to get some objective views. Also good to get the oral history from Roz on the deal. But you know what would make it even better? To get the full story. See if everything lines up.
No way.
I got my popcorn.
We are now joined by Moist Towelette. Moist, welcome to the show.
This is my debut.
Your maiden voyage on the ShadowCast. It was supposed to be just the OG3. We made it to 6 on this one. We got LOS Woj, Moist, and TDK joining us. Moist, we just got finished kind of going over your deal. I want to talk to you about how this came to be. We got a little bit of a background from Roz's perspective. Did you go into today thinking you were parting ways with your 3rd round pick, or is this just kind of how life happens?
Yeah, Roz and I we traded before, so those text lines are just flying at all times of the year. But yeah, I mean, when I woke up today, I wasn't thinking I was going to trade DJ Moore, but the more I thought about it, I need help and I need a change. And the fact that I even won last week was pretty remarkable. But just get some new blood in there. I think there's some running back depth that I needed to address, and I think I got a little bit of that there. And we were just kind of swapping Moors, and those guys just haven't done anything. So let's see. New place. Let's just figure it out.
Pretty amazing. We almost had a Robinson for Robinson trade, and and Roz and Moist come in the clutch, giving us a more for more trade. Well, I want more. I want more reaction from these trades and what goes on. Alex, I don't think I've checked your temp on the kind of 3-way deal that me, you, and House of Pancakes put together. I've always wanted to do a 3-way deal, and I think I finally was able to get a grasp on it. I think we all solved different issues. For me, it was making sure that Mike Williams wasn't the guy that I relied upon for a boom bust week to get us wins. For you, it was Leonard Fournette, and for Dave, it was getting a solid wide receiver 3 with upside in there. And then you add on this Moist and Roz trade. I know your head's spinning right now. It's got to be. But what do you think about this whole thing? Isn't it a good thing for the league to have this kind of interaction and trades happen?
It is. It's great. I'm all juiced up right now. I love all the players moving around, and I'm glad that you guys brought up like getting rid of the trade window, because now we can have more of this. I think this is great for the league. I actually have a question for you, Warren, because I've always thought making a essentially 3-way trade like that is interesting. But the problem is, like, you got to get one person agree to it, and the other person has to agree before you want to make that move. So my question is, who did you make a deal with first, me or David?
So we had the kind of the structure of our deal first. I texted Dave later on saying, I'm trying to get the cobwebs out of this. Is there a deal between you and I that involves Brandon Ayuk and Leonard Fournette that you can maybe send me an offer to, because I'm trying to figure out what to do in this situation. Then it just kind of boiled down to Ayuk 4. There was a quick blip on the radar of Clyde Edwards-Helaire that did not tickle my fancy, as good as he's been. But I was pretty impressed by Zeke last night. I know it's looking like a timeshare, and Pollard looks incredible when he gets the ball in his hands. He looks electric in space. but there's something still that I really like about Zeke, and I do like the fact that an older running back like him gets the time off of drives and snaps that he does. So to answer your question, simply, it was you first getting the parameters down, and then I think I told you I put my front office into a meeting 6 a.m. and I had them create a deal for every single franchise across the board, and I pick and chose which ones I liked the most. A few of them I threw out there and just didn't feel right. The Lenny for Cortland straight up was something that I had my eye on, and you had mentioned we had a bit of a mind meld. And then as we were talking about other additions or subtractions, this hopefully it doesn't get out to Kadarius, but you were also interested in Brandon Ayuk, and I was looking to find a way to send the package rather than just straight up, knowing that I had the Zeke and Ayuk deal. But I just found the Kadarius Toney. As I told you, I had to bonk myself a few times, because if you get on a highlight reel of watching Kadarius Toney play football, it will end very poorly, typically for your franchise. Patman Jones did it the best last year. I don't even think he knew who Kadarius Toney was last year. He just saw the targets that he was getting, picked him up, and no harm, no foul. Now you have a chance to keep him, which could end up being huge if he gets on the field. But yeah, just something that I considered. I knew that the Leonard for Cortland deal straight up was going to be good for the both of us, even without the additional deal with the pancakes. But I also felt like adding a veteran presence that we lose with Lenny leaving, adding a veteran presence in Zeke into this backfield could end up being a pretty big deal in the long run.
I had a quick question about something you just said there. Does anyone know Patman Jones' like pre-draft ritual of just not looking up players' heights, weights, videos? Because I remember he drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round as a rookie. In week 1, he got on the field and we were watching the game together, and he goes, "Wait, that's Clyde Edwards." Like 5'0", little back that can't find the end zone from 1 yard out. But anyway, I digress.
No, in that exact game, he ended up getting stuffed like 3 times in a row at the goal line. Just beautiful.
I love it.
Year 3, baby. He's figuring it out.
He's playing fantasy football on a spreadsheet. You know, you gotta get your eyes involved. And
he's stuck in 2011 with his asterisks.
Ricochets.
Nothing better. And I think, this might inspire many teams to enter the trade space and look for ways to improve their team, because I will tell you, the league is none better than it is right now. I think in terms of savviness and getting guys off the wire quickly. You look at these articles, you constantly read these waiver articles and streamer articles, and half of it doesn't even work for the Shadows. Jamal Williams, Khalil Herbert are the 2 top ads. Those guys are already on squads. You had that same thing last week. Nothing really going because everyone's on there. And then Moist, got to give you credit here. Romeo Doubs, the top wide receiver ad this week, and he was already on the team. You got to be very excited with what you saw with Romeo Doubs. He could end up being a solid replacement for DJ Moore.
Yeah, that was kind of my thinking too. And I mean, I also have Jamison Williams. I don't know what he's going to be, but he could be good. Who knows? They're going to have to throw the ball a ton. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I hate DJ Moore. I think he's burned me before. I bought into this stupid Baker Mayfield hype. And, Chase Edmonds is just whatever. Like, he's just going to be him. But, like, I needed new blood,
Yeah, I don't
DJ
blame
Moore
him.
is dead to me.
That segment is coming back next week. Don't you worry about it one bit. But we have an early little preview there from Moist Howlett. I think we had these 2 guys, Roz and Moist, avoiding 3-0, and how good that's got to feel. I think we've talked about it for a few years now. there's been like 1 or 2 0-3 teams that have made a playoff run. I think the KCQs are in there. I'm in there as well from back in the day, but good Lord, is it just such a grind. And fantasy football in the shadows is a grind already. So I think I want to leave it there. This was the special TradaPALOOOOOZA episode. Anyone else have any parting thoughts? The only non-trader in this TRADER in this group right now is the Dark Knights. And I know that the depth is aplenty over there. I know there will be trades coming on the horizon. Is the front office just lying in wait, or will we see something sooner rather than later?
Nothing imminent to report. Always open to deals,
Gotcha.
but pretty comfortable with where the squad's at. And although waivers is not looking too strong, there's always diamonds in the rough. So
Yeah,
continue
see if
playing that
there's-
game, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, there are always ways to improve the squad. Woj, if you have anything else to announce, feel free to do it now. But unless you got anything else, that was those were 3 bombs dropped that I don't think anyone would be expecting heading into tonight's listening.
I got nothing else to report, but I have heard murmurs of other potential deals. So the phone lines are definitely buzzing this week. I think everyone's trying to get ahead of the jump if they're trying to cut bait with some guys who haven't performed, or if they think highly of other players. I think they're trying to get on them before they boom, because then it's really tough to trade for them.
Yeah, and Alex, just from a league-wide perspective, do you think that this activity and kind of heightened sense of awareness, I think it has something to do with the fact that teams are 1 game out of playoffs across the board, right? Because, I mean, we're not looking at any lost causes anymore. Everyone's in the game.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And I'd also attribute it to the fact that 3 weeks in, you kind of got a sense of what you have and what you don't have, versus 1 week, 2 weeks. It's kind of tough to tell still. So, like that sense of, familiarity with your team and knowing guys that you might like, that you didn't like early, preseason, whatever. And I think that 6th playoff spot is going to affect everybody consciously or subconsciously for the rest of the season, just because, you saw it with, I think, Chafed heading into this week. I forget where he was after week 2, but you go from not in the playoffs to in the playoffs with 1 week. Like, you could be 2-9 and you could still be in the playoffs, right? So you got to put a competitive team out there every week, regardless of if you win and lose.
I love it. Well, there's nothing better than the League of Shadows. This is one episode that's going to stick with us for a long time. The impact of it has yet to be seen, but it's going to happen. It could even happen come Thursday for Chase Edmonds. He could make his way into the Ra's al Ghul lineup and really get this TradaPALOOOOOZA off on the right or wrong foot. Just want to talk real quick. The last thing, the game of the week. We had one of the best write-ups possible for game of the week, a throwback to all of our favorites from Medfield High School class of 2012 and 2013. Roz, what made you pick Patman Jones and Chafe? You mentioned it on the game of the week, but just tell us here, what really drew your eye to this matchup?
Yeah, I didn't even have to look at the score projections. I just saw those two headed against each other and had to pick them. The amount of trash talk that goes back and forth between those two franchises is absolutely sickening. More trash than New York City. So I just had to do it. I'm very excited to see what comes out of Pinata Farms from their marketing departments this week heading into it. Both franchises have been a little quiet this year on social media, so hoping that they both pick it up this week with some trash talk.
Yeah, between the two, we've had some spankies, we've had some sunning, we've had assertions from Patman Jones calling the Chafe gentleman the charmed gentleman for their ability. This all came from the fact, Moist, that Chris Boswell put up 25 points last year on you to really end your season, if you remember that.
Yeah, no, I still kind of think about it from time to time, and wake up in a cold sweat. We don't like to, we don't like to think about that. But yeah.
Yeah, no blame there. For the commish, Alex, Green Eggs and Hamos. For the deputy commish, House of Pancakes, David. I'm your host, the Simba Corp. Boys, thanks for joining us. Woj, thank you. Knights, thank you. Moist, a special thank you. Thanks for jumping on late.
Yeah.
See you week 4.